Good afternoon, guys. Ricardo coming to you live from the Phastek studios. I know we have a lot of new things going on, and you truck guys, as you guys can see, we're here on the truck page, obviously, and as you guys can see, I got a nice big Sierra sitting in the shop. Now, I'll be honest, this thing takes up most of the shop space, and I'm not used to this big of a truck being here, especially with the Shop 2020 that we have sitting outside, and obviously sits a little lower, but hey, this thing is not a bad change from the Shop Silverado. But anyways, what I'm here today to talk about is some tires. Now, one of the big things about tires is that it's always something that, what do I go with? What can fit? How do I know I'm gonna have enough room? What tire size do I go with? How do I get all these things figured out? Because at the end of the day, putting on the lift, putting on that suspension, putting on whatever, whether you're lowering the car, whether you're lowering the truck, raising the truck, either way, you need to make sure that your tires are gonna fit. That's one of the big important parts of your build. I mean, that's how you get going down the road, right? Last thing you wanna do is put a set of stocks on a truck that's got a 6-inch lift. I mean, it's gonna look like you skipped leg day. Let's be honest about that. It's gonna look like you skipped leg day. So, what we're gonna cover today is a little bit about tires and how to kind of factor and find out what exactly is going to fit with your build. Now, this would have been something we could have gotten into very depth. This is something that we can go into a wormhole in a way, because there's really no way to measure and find out exactly what's going to work for your build, because you could have something that you want this look, but you need to have this that goes along with it. So what we're going to kind of cover are some general tips that you might want to pay attention to when you're looking at tires. If you guys have paid attention to the website, you guys might have seen that we've added a lot of tires here lately. So if you haven't, go ahead and head on over to phastek.com and check those out. A lot of new stuff coming up down the line, and we're working on a whole lot down on the back end. Anyways, so going on. So tires, how do I know what's going to fit? How can I measure what's going to fit? Obviously, I got this truck here. It's got a 6-inch lift on it, okay, and it's got 35-inch tires. Here I have the factory tire off our Silverado as an example. So what I want to go over is some tire sizes and what everything kind of means. Now, when you look at tire information, it can get very confusing. Okay, you go look at your tire chart and I don't know they have 265, 275, 285, 70, 30, 50. There can be a whole lot of stuff. And then the R, what does the R mean? What does the number after the R mean? For some of you guys that might not know tires, it can look very confusing when you're looking at it on a chart, but once you kind of understand, it seems pretty simple. So I have a factory tire here. Okay, now this is off our 2020 Silverado that's sitting outside. Okay, so it's off our 2020 Silverado, and this is a 275/60R20. Now it's an LT. Okay, so going over tires, there's two different versions of tires. Okay, there's a metric and there's a flotation. I'm going to go over the metric right now since I'm using a factory tire as the example. So the factory tire, and I'm going to spin it here. Okay, the factory tire, if you look at all tires will have this information. Some are larger print, some are smaller print, so it's something you want to pay attention to. A factory tire is going to be a metric calculated tire. You're not going to find a flotation size on these tires, okay? Any general tire you get off of any vehicle, truck, car, doesn't matter. It's all going to be a metric style tire. What a metric style tire is basically this right here. You see this measurement. Now I know this one's small. It's a factory print style. So it's right here, the 275/60R20. Okay. Now, first thing we want to cover is the 275. Okay, the 275 is basically the millimeter size, and that covers the width of the tire right here. Okay, that's going to cover your width of the tire. It's a 275 millimeters. Okay, that's what that is. The 60 right there after that slash, that 60 right there is basically a calculation of the width of it here. It's a 60%. So basically that is 60%, and it breaks down. It's the percentage of the width. Okay, so you have the 60, so that's going to be, you take 50, your line right here, 60, let's put it right here. Okay, so that's your calculation there. Okay, then the R20. The R20. Basically, R is radial, and that's for the style of tire. Okay, you might have some differences depending on your style of tires that you go with, whether it's but that really kind of, getting into that really kind of goes into a whole nother class of tire that isn't really used for truck applications or 1500 applications. That's if you're towing and you have heavy loads and everything like that. That's when that changes. The 20, that's the size of the wheel. Okay, so those three numbers are your main three important numbers. You have your section width, you have your aspect ratio, and you have your rim size. So those are the three main components you want to pay attention to. Now, like I said, a factory style tire is going to be in the metric style, metric calculations. When you step into the aftermarket, you step into the big tires, like goes over here, you're going to go into the flotation. These are easier to read, okay? These are a lot easier to read. A lot easier to read, a lot easier to understand. Okay, so this one right here I have specifically. This one on this truck here is, reading down on the calculations here, 35 by 1250 R20. Now, some have this before or after the entire number. Now, this one has LT after the rim size. Okay, the LT basically stands for light truck. Okay, now the LT, they do have their different load ratings. So if you guys are looking at tires and maybe you tow a heavy load or something like that, you might want to pay attention to the load ratings on the LT tires, because then you might need to step it up to something else. Okay, but the LT, light truck, P is for passenger. Okay, so if you guys see a P on there, you might see it on your car or your daily driver. You might see it on there. It's P for passenger, ST for special, as you see, looking over at my notes here, specialty trailer, and T for temporary. T for temporary, that is really just your spare tire. Specialty trailer, obviously, if you have a different trailer with different load ratings. So that's something to pay attention to. Okay, so how do we know what size tire? How can we calculate getting a 35-inch tire between the factory? This is about a 32. Really, if you do the math and everything, it's just a little over 32, just under 33. Okay, so how do we know what size tire we're going with if we're going with a metric size? Okay, we're going with metric size. You're looking at all those tires and everything, you're going from there. So one thing you're always going to kind of want to pay attention to, metric will never be an even number. Okay, and what I mean by that is that this number, by the time you do the calculations and everything, it's always going to have a decimal point. Okay, these tires over here typically won't have a decimal point. You get a 35, a flotation tire, okay? Flotation style tire. You got 33s, you got 35s, 37s, 40s, 44s, and then obviously you can go a lot higher if you go up to the big dogs, but then at that point your truck's sitting way up here and you're in a whole nother ball game. So, there's no decimal point with the flotation style tires. Metric style tires. If we do the calculation on this tire here, I have it written down over there. If we do the calculation off of this tire, it really kind of comes out to about 32.7, I'm sorry. So it's a 32.7, and that's kind of the size tire it is. That's what it's calculated for. Obviously, as you're going down the road, you're driving, obviously it is going to shrink. That's what happens when we have to replace the tires. It's kind of what happens. But that's what the tire is built. So it's something to really kind of pay attention to as far as selecting what size tires you guys want to go with or what style of tire, because obviously the style of tire also makes a difference. Okay, you have something that might be a little aggressive like this one over here. You have something that's a little more tamer or like this one over here. It just depends, but all the sizes are generally the same. Sometimes if you have an aggressive one, you might need to make some extra clearances to clear the body, and we'll go over that in a second. So, but for understanding tires, I hope that kind of gives you a little bit of back half. Like I said, it can be a little confusing, but we do have it pretty well laid out on the website. So if there's anything you guys need, our sales guys will know. So anyways, that's that. So moving on to lifts. Changing gears here. Moving on to lifts. Now, how do I know what size tire I can go with per lift? Well, it's a good question, right? I mean, that's something you ask yourselves, because obviously if you're adding a lift, you're going to want to change those tires out, right? Like I said, you don't want to put a 6-inch lift, factory size tire on it. It looks like we skipped leg day at the gym. Trust me. It's not fun. It's never fun. You know, no one wants to look like that. Everyone wants to have that nice, meaty, beefy look. So, sticking the factory tire aside, sticking that one aside, and talking about how to figure out what tire to go with what lift. Well, the good thing is a lot of manufacturers that develop these lifts, they kind of do the grunt work for you. Okay, they kind of let you know, if you're going to go with this lift, you need to go with this. We'll take Ready Lift for example. Okay, Ready Lift, we have it on our truck. Those guys were very helpful with everything that we had. When it came to questions, we wanted to figure this out, figure that out. What do we need to go with? Those guys did a lot of grunt work. So if you look at our product pages, you'll have that information basically there. So if you go with like a 2-inch lift, which is what we have in our truck, lifted the front half 2-inch, we're able to put at least a 33. 33 is probably the minimum size I'd probably go with just for it to look good. You can go with the 35. Ready Lift suggested that you can go with the 35, but you might need to clearance some extra space. Makes sense. Even with our 33s, we had to make a little bit of clearance. That's on a 2-inch lift. 4-inch lift. Okay, if you want to go with the 4-inch lift, I'd go with the 35 at that point. At that point, 35, you should clear. Might have to make a little bit of adjustments, like I'm going to show you guys with this one, okay? 6-inch lift, you can go with the 35. You can go a little higher, again, but 37, if you go with the 37 at that point, then you are running into more clearance issues. 8-inch lift, you're going to clear basically a 37 tire. Okay, 37-inch tire you should clear. Obviously, the style of tire plays a factor into it as well. You have something a little more aggressive, then you might need to make some changes. Okay, so we're going to use this truck as our example. Okay, now this truck, it is a 2019, I believe, 2019 GMC Sierra AT4. It's actually a very nice truck. If you guys got one of these trucks, these things are pretty sweet. So the 2019 AT4 Sierra, it's got a 6-inch lift, 35-inch tires. The thing rides pretty well, actually. It sits up really high. You know, once you're kind of in it and everything, you're kind of looking down at everybody. So it looks pretty cool. I mean, I'm 6 feet and I'm barely looking at what would be the driver's shoulder. So everything here that we're going to have to measure and calculate, how do we know what to go with? How did someone find out? Like I said, a lot of manufacturers, they did the grunt work because they're going to develop the kits. So they need to kind of know, hey, what size tire can we go? Because before they publish it, they want to make sure the truck sits right. Like I said, they're not going to put a 6-inch lift on this truck, stick the factory wheel and tire combination back on it, and then take pictures from there. Nobody wants to see that. You know, something like that, it looks incomplete. Okay, so that's the last thing we want to go around. It looks incomplete, so hey, what size tire can fit? Well, here's where we get into the grunt work. Okay, 6-inch lift. Obviously, it's got 35s, but I'm going to let you guys know when I said you might have to clearance some things, that's what they did over here. So if I can get my camera, pull my camera guy in. If I can get him in over here. Now, they did have to clearance this stuff over here, okay? Now, there's typically a guard that sits back here, okay? Well, that guard is obviously completely gone. And as you guys can see, there's also been a little bit of rubbing, probably when the tires were fresh and new, and there might have been a little bit here. But there was a guard that sits here. Well, that guard is completely gone. Now, that you can do, you can take that guard off and you can clear the front or clear the rear of the tire, no problem. And then the fronts. What do I run into the fronts? Am I going to have to do the same thing? Well, unfortunately, with the fronts, there's really nothing to really remove. You do have to trim and everything from there. I'm going to walk around this side and kind of show you guys exactly what you need. So on the front side, if we're here in the fender, they realistically just kind of trim this. They trim the plastic so that way it doesn't hit that tire when it articulates. Because obviously you also have to pay attention to the suspension moving. You're going to go over speed bumps, you're going to go over curbs, you're going to go over this or that. You have to pay attention to all that, so you have a little bit of clearance that you might have to go with. They did that probably just so that way there's no issues with any sounds. It doesn't sound like anything's breaking or anything like that. Everything's going to go together pretty smooth. So that's how you kind of can know exactly what size tire to go with and go from there. Now, like I said, the tires, it's hard to calculate exactly what you're going to need so that way it clears and where it goes from there and all that good jiving stuff, and it goes from there. So it's hard to calculate exactly what you're going to need by telling you, you have this, you're going to go with this. Because another factor plays is your wheel size. Okay, you can go with If you're a true off-roader and you're going to do some mudding, you're going to do some rock crawling or anything like that, I probably don't suggest going anything over an 18-inch wheel. Simply because you can get a big tire, so you have a lot of footprint, okay, and you can let some air out of that tire, okay. Now you can do 20s, yeah, you can. You just have to go with obviously a much larger tire, much larger aspect ratio, so that way you can let the air out of there, and obviously do your wheeling and go from there. That's where all the fun stuff kind of begins, right? So if you're going to do some heavy off-roading, rock crawling, you want to set your truck up for that, 18-inch wheel, and really kind of go from there. But what offset do I need? How do I need to know what's back spacing? How do I need to know what's there or there? That's where things kind of go into being a little confusing, and what tire choices and everything go from there. So to measure for your tires, obviously you're going to have your offsets are not going to matter when it comes to selecting your wheel size. Okay, yes, manufacturers have their different offsets for specific wheels, so they might not offer a certain offset in this wheel because of for whatever reason. It might be the design on the back half that, you know, has the caliper clearance and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of plays into it. But selecting the wheel and tire combination, now it really just depends. You can go with like a 20-inch wheel, and obviously you can get your different size 35-inch tires and 18s and 17s and stuff like that. That's when you really start playing with all that stuff. But to get everything together here, you want to make sure that your offset's correct, so that way you're not running into any suspension on the back half of things. Okay, that's the last thing you want to do. Is you want to get everything dialed in, you want to get everything set up, and then you run into an issue with your tire hitting your suspension. So that's why you want to pay attention to the offset, so that way you can make sure your wheels are calculated correctly, so that way you can clear all that stuff. Typically an off-road wheel for something like this, on this application, you're probably looking at anywhere from a -12 to a -18 measurement. Obviously, it also depends on the wheel. The wheel design does play a factor into it, because you have some that are super concave, some that are not concave, some that have, like, you know, they kind of hoop around. So it really does depend. But you want to kind of look at all that stuff, so that way you guys can know exactly what you have to go through when it comes to selecting those wheel and tire combinations. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and we can go on for days because there's probably a whole lot of questions about it. But that kind of gives you a general idea as far as your wheels and tire combination. Now, you're probably looking at this saying, okay, well, you showed me where it hits on the front, where they cleared and everything. What does the back look like? If I could get my camera guy, we're going to walk around the other side, because I want to show you, obviously, our tires turned to one way. I want to show you what it's like turned the other way, so that way you can see what I'm talking about, that there was a mud guard. You can go out to your truck right now and say, well, yeah, mine does have one. Mine doesn't have one. It just depends. If you bought your truck set up already with the lift and everything, then you should be fine, dialed in. The installation should have already taken care of everything. But in case they didn't, you're doing it yourself at your house. You want to make sure that everything clears, not a problem. So this is what I'm talking about back here. All right, I'm going to kind of move that here. So what I'm talking about back here, okay? So you can see, obviously, our wheels turned, and it's not turned full lock to lock, okay? We're not lock to lock right now, okay? Lock to lock is basically all the way over and when it stops. That's lock to lock, okay? So we have this, we're all the way over, and you can see if there was a mud guard here, and I believe the factory one comes down not super far, but it comes down a little bit. That one there, that's going to hit. I mean, my hand, it's full on hitting. I can't even do anything with it. So that's going to hit the factory mud guard that sits back here. I know on our truck, when we put the 2-inch leveling kit on the front, we did 33-inch tires, we had to clearance a little bit, just to make sure that we weren't going to have any noise when we went full lock to lock. So it's something you also have to pay attention to when you're selecting your wheels and tires, is that you want to make sure that you're not going to be hitting anything when it comes to lock to lock. So I showed you the front, I showed you the back over here, let my camera guy kind of got in there. So that kind of shows you where a mud guard or a protection, a rock protection, or what have you call it, might be, so that way there's nothing there. So that's where it sits on the factory one. Obviously this one's removed, obviously, because it is running a 35-inch tire, and that did need the extra clearance, so that way they didn't have any issues with rubbing. Sorry, I kind of lost track there. They didn't have any issues with rubbing, so that way they can make sure, hey, this guy's going to go down the road, not going to have any issue, not going to have a problem, and they take care of it basically lock to lock. So it's something to really kind of pay attention to and understand. So at the end of the day, what does it take to measure wheels and tires? It takes a lot. Okay, it takes a lot. To kind of give you a quick rundown, in case you guys are just joining us, kind of give you a quick rundown, measuring for your wheels and tires takes a lot of calculations. So that way you know exactly what you're doing. You want to make sure you know your lift. You want to make sure you know your wheel and tires. What offsets are you running? What model do you have? Maybe some models don't have some of those mud guards and tight rock guards. They don't have some of that information. Okay, so it's something that really kind of that you want to play a factor into everything, obviously, and then selecting the wheels and tires. Do you want a metric style tire? Metric style tire is going to be more readily available, something that's constantly always there, because those are the light truck and vehicle applications such as that. The metric stuff, or the flotation, the flotation tires, that's when you get into a bit more specialty applications. So sizes for the flotation might not be as abundant as the metric style. So it's really kind of something that plays a factor. And like I said earlier, if you guys are just chiming in, the metric size is always going to measure with a decimal point. There's always going to be some calculation there that's going to basically ensue the decimal point. The flotation size tires, those are going to be the solid 35, 33, 37, 40, 44-inch tires, and really kind of go from there. Okay, got a question I want to answer here. So you kind of rolling through stuff here. Paul, thank you for joining. See, Santiago, thank you for kind of jumping in, man. Let's see here. Running through some of this. Let's see here. Let's see, Paul just purchased a 2021 Z71 Silverado 4x4. It does not have, oh, excuse me. It does not have fog lights. What do you recommend? Good question. Good question. I actually have something coming down the line for you guys. Now, there's two different kits that you can do. Okay, well, depending on your model, okay, it really kind of depends on the model. You can go with the Chevrolet kit. Chevrolet has their fog light kits, but there are two versions of that kit, so it's something you have to pay attention to. We don't have the listings on our website, but I do know that they are coming down the line because I do have those products coming in, so that way we can get product pictures and installation videos and stuff like that for you guys. Okay, now what we're also working on our own kit where it's going to mount in the same factory location. You have your factory bezel sitting down there. It's going to mount in that factory bezel location. You're going to remove the factory bezel, and you're going to basically attach any light you want to at that point. It is going to have a certain cutout for any light that fits. I want to say, I believe we're going with either a 4 or 5-inch light. I think it's a 4-inch. Okay, we're going about a 4-inch light that we're going to have that hole cut out. And so basically all you do is attach your light, attach the bracket, wire your light wherever you want, and there you go. Then you got fog lights. You can wire it to the car, or you can wire it to its own switch. It's up to you at that point. But that's a good question. Do you have rear fender well liners? That's another one. Okay, Paul? Yeah, same question for Paul. Thanks. 2 questions. Thanks, buddy. Same thing with those. There are Husky liners that is coming out with their kit. I think it just came out not that long ago. I know we don't have it listed on the website, but we do have their kit that we are working on. And also there's the factory components. You can do the factory one. Factory one takes a little bit more because that one is going to require the factory hardware if you want it to look uniform and everything from there. So you can do that, or you can do the Husky ones. Personally, I'd probably take the Husky liners, only because they're not going to be felt. They're going to be more of the rubber material that Husky is known for. So I'd probably go with that route, only because when it comes to cleaning, I like the felt, I like the way it looks, don't get me wrong, I like the factory option, but when that thing gets muddy and dirty, it can stay dirty for quite a bit, and once you kind of get that dirt stuck in that felt, it really kind of stays there, so it's hard to something you want to get in there and you have to scrub. The Husky liner, on the other hand, since it's plastic, it's not going to be as porous. Pressure wash it out, you're done. Let's see here. Santiago, does the 6-inch include the factory 2-inch? Depending on, I'm assuming we're talking about the lift here. Depending on the lift, some manufacturers have their own ways of achieving the looks and the lift points, right? So it really just depends. You have suspension lifts and you have body lifts. Some you have comboed where it's suspension, part body. So it really just depends on what application we're looking at. But most of them will not include. So typically, if you have a 2-inch leveling kit, and then you step it up to a 6-inch kit, 6-inch lift kit, then typically that 2-inch leveling kit's getting tossed out the side, man. So it's really kind of, it just depends. Some of them integrate it, some of them don't. It just depends on what we're looking at and how we're kind of factoring everything together. But hopefully that kind of answers your questions there, hopefully, and really kind of goes from there. But that's what it takes, guys, to fit some tires. So going back to what we were talking about, that's what it's going to take to get some tires and everything adjusted so that way, like I said, your truck doesn't look like it's, you know, missed leg day. I mean, that's the last thing you want your truck. You don't want to be driving down the road and then you have factory tires on your 6-inch lift. I mean, like I said, I'm going to grab this again just for reference. Like I said, you don't want it to look like you skipped leg day. That's the last thing everybody wants to look like. It's the last thing I want you to look like. I want you to be nice and set up. I want to make sure that your combination is going to look like that. Because let's be honest, that looks a whole lot better than the factory combo. And if you guys have been following us long enough, you guys know that even our truck, our Silverado, we set it up the same way. We knew we were going to do a leveling kit to start off with because that's probably one of the first things, Santiago, you might want a leveling kit for your truck before you go after the 6-inch. I want to try it out a little bit. Leveling kit, there we go, is a whole lot easier to do than a 6-inch lift, right? If you want to do it yourself in your garage, can I do it? We do have an installation video on our YouTube channel. It is a little bit of, you have a lot of big components, that's really about it. But once you kind of get everything lined out, everything goes from there. And then obviously the 33-inch tires that we obviously enjoyed, the Toyo application that we have works out great. We want something a little aggressive, so we did have to clearance a little bit more just because of the extra knobs on the side. Really, other than that, we're good. So that's what it takes, guys. You have the metric size, which is typically a factory tire application, or you have the flotation, which is going to be a solid number, which you run across the 33s, 35s, 37s, 40s, and 44s, and if you want to keep going, keep going. Hey, where you want to end your tire application, your lift is where you want to go. It's your truck, right? So that's where everything goes. I hope this video kind of helps you guys out. Thank you guys for joining. We appreciate the questions. If I didn't answer anything, please send us a message. We will be more than happy to reply as best as we can. And that guy's having some fun. So, I mean, if there's anything else we can kind of answer, let us know. Shoot us a comment. Leave us a comment. Send us a message. Even give our guys a call. Everything gets kind of fed back so that way we know what we might have to answer for you guys and we know what we might have to educate them on. So I want to thank you for joining and we'll see you guys next time. Tires, we got it.